Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are delighted to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our journey of stories today. Contraceptives are only 99% effective. He was that 1% accident. These words pierced Gareth's heart like a sharp blade as he stood in the corner of his living room. He gripped his beer bottle tightly, watching his wife Lorelei and her sister laughing in the distance, as if the remark was merely a harmless joke. Around them, their mutual friends laughed along, someone even raising a glass to him, as if this was something worth celebrating. Today was Gareth's 35th birthday. As a long-haul truck driver, he had specially adjusted his schedule to ensure he could be home to celebrate. Lorelei had organized this party for him, inviting neighbors and friends. Everything should have been warm and wonderful until he heard those words. "We've been married for 7 years, yet Lorelei still sees me as a mistake," Gareth muttered to himself. He put down his bottle and quietly left the bustling living room, retreating to their bedroom. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Gareth gazed at their wedding photo on the wall. They looked so happy then, full of hope. He still remembered when he first met Lorelei, at a gas station where her car had broken down, and he happened to pass by and fixed it for her. Afterward, they fell in love, got married, and built this home. Once, this was the haven he most longed to return to after his long journeys. Now, however, this home seemed to have only a shell remaining. Gareth knew the problems between him and Lorelei didn't just start today. The long separations had gradually distanced their relationship. He had tried to change, applying for short-haul routes, staying home on weekends whenever possible, even learning to cook so he could prepare meals for Lorelei when he was home. But these efforts seemed unable to bridge the growing gap between them. Gareth opened the closet and took out a backpack from the deepest corner. This backpack had always been kept there, ready for his occasional fishing trips. He began stuffing clothes into it, a few t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, several pairs of socks and underwear, plus toiletries. His movements were mechanical yet calm, as if he had rehearsed this countless times. After packing the bag, Gareth opened the bedside drawer and took out a notebook. This was his record of household expenses, reflecting his consistent meticulousness and responsibility. He flipped through the recent pages and saw some expenditures that confused him. Expenses at high-end restaurants, considerable shopping costs, and some large transfers he didn't remember approving. These anomalies had already caught his attention, but he had always believed Lorelei would have a reasonable explanation. Now, these suspicions connected into a terrifying thread in his mind. Gareth took a deep breath and decided to make one final confirmation. He left the bedroom, walked past the still laughing guests, and came to the backyard. There, he saw a heartbreaking scene. Lorelei and his neighbor and friend Thaddeus were talking intimately, with Thaddeus's hand naturally resting on Lorelei's waist, while Lorelei was laughing more happily than at any other time during the party. Gareth didn't disturb them, but quietly returned to the bedroom. He took out his phone and sent a message to his boss, requesting a route adjustment starting tomorrow. Then he sent another message to his cousin, asking if he could temporarily stay with him. As the party was winding down and guests were leaving one by one, Gareth still remained in the bedroom. He heard Lorelei seeing off the last guest, and then the sound of the faucet. She was cleaning up in the kitchen. Gareth walked out of the bedroom with the backpack slung over his shoulder. Lorelei had her back to him, washing the cups and plates left from the party. "The party was a success," Gareth said calmly. Lorelei turned around, saw his backpack, and showed a puzzled expression. "Where are you going? Isn't tomorrow your day off?" "I took a temporary job," Gareth said, his voice still calm. "Long haul. Might be a while before I come back." Lorelei frowned. "You're always like this, leaving again as soon as you get back. When can we live like a normal couple?" "Normal couple?" Gareth repeated, finally revealing a hint of emotion in his voice. Normal couples don't call their partner the household mistake or the 1% contraceptive failure at their birthday party. Lorelei's expression froze. "That was just a joke, Gareth." Everyone was laughing. "I wasn't laughing," Gareth interrupted her. "And I didn't see Thaddeus laughing either. By the way, when did you two start? 3 months ago? 6 months ago? Or longer?" Lorelei's face instantly turned pale, but she quickly regained her composure. "What are you talking about? Thaddeus and I are just friends. Friends don't put their hands on each other's waists, unless they're more than just friends," Gareth said. "I've been trying to ignore the signs. your new clothes, your sudden interest in my schedule, the new password on your phone. I told myself I was being paranoid. Now I know I wasn't paranoid. I just didn't want to face reality. A flash of panic crossed Lorelai's eyes, but was quickly replaced by anger. You're never home. Every time you come back, you're either too tired and fall straight asleep, or you're busy watching your baseball games. I need someone to accompany me, care for me, listen to me. At least Thaddeus listens to me, instead of only caring about his work and rest time. Gareth shook his head. I requested route adjustments so I could be home more. I learned to cook because you said you were tired. I gave up weekend fishing because you said you wanted my company. I did all this, and what about you? What were you doing? Sleeping with my friend. Lorelai was silent for a moment, her expression shifting between anger and fear. Finally, she chose to attack. You can't be so dramatic over a joke. If you really cared about our marriage, you wouldn't always put work first. Thaddeus understands my feelings. He's always there when I need him. So you admit it. Garrett's voice was frightfully calm. Lorelai realized she had slipped up, but it was too late to take it back. It's not entirely my fault, Gareth. You share the responsibility. If you cared more about our relationship. Enough, Gareth interrupted her. I don't want to hear you make excuses for betraying me. I'm leaving. He turned toward the door, and Lorelai called after him. You can't just leave like this. This is your home too. We can talk, resolve this issue. Gareth stopped, but didn't turn around. A home shouldn't make someone feel like a mistake. A home should be a safe harbor, not a battlefield of betrayal. With that, he opened the door and walked out, without looking back. In the night sky, stars gazed indifferently at everything, and Gareth knew that from tonight on, his life would never be the same. The first month after leaving home was the most difficult. Gareth stayed in his cousin's guest room, getting up early and returning late, trying to avoid interacting with anyone. He applied for a new transport route, which meant he would no longer pass through the city where he and Lorelai had lived. His phone was filled with missed calls and messages from Lorelai, but he didn't reply to any of them. Meanwhile, Gareth contacted a lawyer and began divorce proceedings. He provided bank statements, credit card bills, and other evidence showing Lorelai's infidelity and squandering of their joint property. The lawyer told him these might help with property division, but he needed more direct evidence of infidelity. It was then that Gareth received a message from a mutual friend, Fletcher. Fletcher sent him several photos of Lorelai and Thaddeus taken at a restaurant. In the photos, they were cuddled closely together, with gestures too intimate for ordinary friends. Fletcher wrote in the message, I thought you should know about this. Sorry, brother. Gareth forwarded these photos to his lawyer. In the following weeks, he learned a new way of living. He began recording every expense, learning about investment and financial management. He enrolled in an online course, using his rest times during long-haul drives to study. He started listening to financial podcasts on the road instead of the rock music he used to enjoy. 3 months later, when he learned that Lorelai and Thaddeus were publicly together, Gareth wasn't surprised. They had even moved in together at Thaddeus's apartment, while the house Gareth and Lorelai shared stood empty, awaiting disposition after the divorce. The lawyer told Gareth they had sufficient evidence of Lorelai's infidelity and how she had squandered their joint property. More importantly, they discovered that Lorelai and Thaddeus had invested together in some questionable projects, using money from Gareth and Lorelai's joint account. Most of these investments had failed, causing significant losses. This is favorable for our case, the lawyer said. We can argue for a more advantageous property division. Gareth nodded. I don't want more. I just want what's fair. The divorce proceedings lasted nearly a year. During this time, Gareth continued his work and studies. He began making small investments in the stock market, gradually gaining experience. He joined a mutual aid organization for truck drivers, where they discussed routes, rest stops, and how to stay healthy and alert during long-haul driving. Just a week before the divorce was to be finalized, Gareth received a text from Thaddeus. We need to talk. About Lorelai, about money. Gareth didn't reply. He knew what Thaddeus was referring to, those failed investments and the financial crisis they might be facing. But this was no longer his problem. Instead, he took a screenshot of the text and sent it to his lawyer as further evidence. They're getting anxious, the lawyer commented, probably realizing the property division won't be favorable to them. I don't care what they're anxious about, Gareth replied. I just want to end all this as soon as possible. The divorce was finally completed with terms relatively favorable to Gareth. Given Lorelei's infidelity and wasteful spending, the court awarded Gareth ownership of the house and most of their joint savings. Lorelei received her personal belongings and a small amount of cash. The last time Gareth saw Lorelei was outside the courthouse. She looked tired and haggard, but when she saw Gareth, a strange confidence appeared on her face. "Gareth, you can't just end everything like this," she said, her voice low but firm. "We had 7 years of marriage. I know I made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes. You're not perfect either." Gareth looked at her, feeling a strange detachment, as if a stranger stood before him. "My imperfections are not the same as your betrayal, Lorelei. We're done. Good luck. You'll regret this, Gareth." Lorelei's tone suddenly sharpened. "You think you've won? You got the house and money, but you lost me. You'll find out how empty life is alone." Gareth smiled faintly. "Compared to living with someone who betrayed me, I'd rather choose emptiness. Goodbye, Lorelei." He turned and left, feeling the burden on his chest finally lifted. This wasn't victory, it was release. He knew the real journey was just beginning. In the days after the divorce, Gareth sold the house full of memories and moved to a small city in another state. He used the money to buy a comfortable apartment and continued his long-haul trucking work. However, he began considering longer-term plans. Perhaps one day, he could own his own small transportation company. Meanwhile, through his network of friends, Gareth learned that the relationship between Lorelei and Thaddeus had begun to crack. Those failed investments had led them into serious financial difficulties. Thaddeus had accumulated considerable debt, and Lorelei was implicated. Worse still, when some of Thaddeus's unethical business practices were exposed, his reputation in the community plummeted. This news was neither surprising nor particularly satisfying to Gareth. He was just grateful he had gotten out in time, avoiding being dragged into Thaddeus's business ventures. He had already moved on, focusing on his own life and future. Gareth began participating in local social events, making new friends, and even trying dating, though he remained cautious about intimate relationships. He found himself enjoying a simpler life, drinking beer with friends in the evening, fishing on weekends, with no one calling him a mistake or an accident. 2 years after the divorce, Gareth successfully applied for a loan and purchased his first truck. He registered a small transportation company and began taking orders. The business was difficult to start, but his diligence and meticulousness won clients' trust. He hired his first employee, an experienced driver, which allowed Gareth to focus more on business development. Meanwhile, Gareth hadn't forgotten about the small debts Thaddeus owed him. When they were still friends, Thaddeus had borrowed money from him multiple times, promising to repay, but never fulfilling that promise. These loans had formal IOUs, and although the amounts weren't large, Gareth decided to pursue them through legal channels. This wasn't about the money, it was a matter of principle. "Why are you still entangled with this small money?" his cousin once asked. "Haven't you already moved on to a better life?" "It's not about the money," Gareth replied. "It's about responsibility and integrity. Thaddeus chose to betray my friendship, but he still needs to be accountable for his promises." The legal process moved slowly but steadily. Meanwhile, Garrett's company began turning a profit. He purchased a second truck and hired more employees. His business model was simple but effective, focusing on reliability and punctuality, building long-term client relationships rather than pursuing short-term profits. 3 years passed, and Garrett's small company gradually established itself. He now owned 5 trucks and had 10 employees. He no longer needed to spend long periods on the road himself, but mainly handled dispatching and client relationships. He bought a small house with a yard and adopted a dog, and life gradually fell into place. One evening, Gareth returned home from the company to find 2 people standing at his door. Even in the dim light, he could recognize them, Lorelei and Thaddeus. 3 years had passed, and they both looked different. Lorelei no longer possessed that vibrant elegance, but appeared tired and tense. Thaddeus had lost that arrogant confidence and looked as if life had defeated him. Gareth stopped his car and slowly walked toward them. No greetings, no small talk, just a simple question. "What do you want?" "Gareth, we need to talk," Lorelei said, with a barely detectable tremor in her voice. "We have nothing to talk about," Gareth replied calmly. "The divorce is final. All connections have been severed. This is about Thaddeus's IOUs," Lorelei said urgently. The court ordered us to repay them, plus interest and legal fees, but we really have no money, Gareth finished for her. So you've come to me, hoping I'll waive those debts? Not just that. Thaddeus finally spoke, his voice hoarser than Gareth remembered. Some of my investments went wrong. There are legal difficulties. We need your help. Gareth laughed, but there was no warmth in his smile. You betrayed me, hurt me, and then expect me to help you? Is that why you're here? Gareth, I know we wronged you. Lorelai's voice revealed desperation. But this is an emergency. Thaddeus might face criminal charges, and if you could tell investigators he's an honest person. Honest, Gareth interrupted, the coldness in his voice enough to make them flinch. A man who has an affair with his friend's wife? A man who borrows money and doesn't repay? Is that your idea of honesty? Thaddeus's face turned pale. Listen, Gareth, I know I made mistakes, but I'm really in trouble now. If I go to prison, that's the consequence of your own choices, Gareth said, his voice calm but firm. Just like you chose to betray my friendship, and Lorelai chose to betray our marriage. Every choice has consequences, and now you're facing yours. Are you so cold-hearted? Lorelai suddenly erupted. Can't you let go of the past and help someone who was once important to you? Gareth was silent for a moment, carefully examining the two people before him. They indeed looked desperate, but he felt no sympathy or pity in his heart, only a strange detachment from the past. 3 years ago, he finally said, on my birthday, you called me a mistake and an accident in front of everyone. That night, I discovered your betrayal. When I left, neither of you came after me or sincerely apologized. Instead, you continued your relationship, squandering our joint property. Now, when you're in trouble and need help, you remember me. This isn't about letting go of the past, Lorelai. It's about character and values. I don't owe you anything. He walked around them toward his front door. As he reached for his keys, Thaddeus suddenly grabbed his arm. You don't understand the severity of the situation, Gareth. Thaddeus's voice carried a hint of threat. If I go to prison, Lorelai will have nothing. Is that really what you want? Gareth calmly shook off Thaddeus's hand. Don't threaten me, Thaddeus. What I want is to live a life without you too, and I've achieved that. As for your problems, you created them yourselves, and you should solve them yourselves. He opened the door and walked into the house, then turned to face them. Now, please leave my property. Otherwise, I'll call the police. A flash of fear crossed Lorelai's eyes. Gareth, please. At least give us a chance to explain. The opportunity has passed, Gareth said, without a hint of hesitation in his voice. Goodbye. He closed the door, hearing Lorelai crying outside while Thaddeus cursed. But these sounds were like coming through a layer of glass to him, audible but unable to touch his heart. He had moved beyond past hurts and built a new life. And in this life, there was no place for Lorelai and Thaddeus. After closing the door, Gareth stood in the entryway, listening to the activity outside. Lorelai's crying gradually stopped, replaced by low arguments between her and Thaddeus. A few minutes later, he heard the sound of a car starting, then tires crunching over gravel, growing distant. He took a deep breath and walked into the kitchen, pouring himself a whiskey. His dog Jasper, a 3-year-old Labrador, followed him, nudging his hand with a wet nose, seemingly sensing his owner's emotional fluctuation. It's okay, buddy, Gareth said softly, stroking Jasper's head. Just some old history being revisited. He took his glass to the backyard and sat on the wooden platform he had recently built. Stars dotted the night sky, and occasionally the sound of a passing car could be heard in the distance. This tranquility was part of the life he had worked hard to establish over the past few years. No dramatic conflicts, no deception, just peace and stability. However, the sudden appearance of Lorelai and Thaddeus had disrupted this balance. The news they brought, that Thaddeus might face criminal charges, that Lorelai might be left with nothing, stirred a strange feeling in his chest. Not sympathy, more like an awareness of fate's irony. The next morning, when Gareth arrived at his company office, he received a call from his lawyer. Mr. Gareth, I just got word that Mr. Thaddeus is involved in a rather serious investment fraud case, the lawyer said in a professional tone. Investigators might contact you, as you once had business dealings with him. What type of fraud? Gareth asked, already having a suspicion. Mainly an investment scam targeting wealthy retirees. He promised high returns, but was actually running a Ponzi scheme. Recently, the money chain broke, and the whole thing was exposed. Gareth recalled Thaddeus's so-called investment opportunities and the projects he had once tried to persuade Gareth to join. I see. What will they want to know? Mainly to confirm whether you were involved or aware. But according to our records, your only financial connection with Mr. Thaddeus was those small loans with formal IOUs, so you should have nothing to worry about. Gareth thanked the lawyer for the information, and after hanging up, he fell into thought. Thaddeus's scam explained why he and Lorelei had suddenly appeared at his door, pleading for help. They weren't just facing financial difficulties, but potentially criminal charges and imprisonment. In the following days, Gareth busied himself with company affairs, trying to put Lorelei and Thaddeus's visit out of his mind. He met with several potential clients, discussing the possibility of expanding the business scope. His company had already established a good reputation in the region, and now was the time to consider broader markets. On Friday evening, just as Gareth was preparing to lock up the office and leave, he received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Mr. Gareth?" a professional female voice asked. "Yes, it is. This is Special Investigator Winifred from the FBI. We're investigating an investment fraud case involving Thaddeus. I'd like to ask you a few questions, if that's convenient." Gareth agreed, and she posed a series of questions about his relationship with Thaddeus and whether he was involved in or aware of Thaddeus's investment activities. Gareth answered truthfully, describing their former friendship, Thaddeus's betrayal, and those unpaid loans. "Did you know of anything suspicious about Mr. Thaddeus's investment plans?" Clark asked. "I was never directly involved in his investment activities," Gareth replied. "But before our friendship ended, he tried multiple times to persuade me to invest in projects promising high returns. I felt something wasn't right, so I refused." The investigator recorded his statement in detail, then asked, "Mr. Thaddeus and your ex-wife have contacted you, haven't they? What did they ask you to do?" Gareth hesitated for a moment. Although he had no sympathy for Lorelei and Thaddeus, directly causing their arrest wasn't his style either. "They did contact me, but I refused to meet or talk with them." This wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Clark seemed to notice his hesitation but didn't press further. "If you recall any information that might be relevant to the case, please contact me," she finally said, giving Gareth a business card. After hanging up, Gareth felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was angry about Thaddeus's actions, using trust to deceive innocent people. On the other hand, thinking that Lorelei might be implicated because of Thaddeus's behavior brought a touch of unease to his heart. That evening, sitting in his backyard, petting Jasper, he pondered whether he should tell the investigator more. Not to help Thaddeus. He indeed should be held accountable for his fraudulent behavior. But for Lorelei, regardless of how she had hurt him, should she really be implicated for Thaddeus's crimes? His thoughts were interrupted by his phone ringing. It was Lorelei's number. After a moment's hesitation, Gareth answered the call. "Gareth." Lorelei's voice was full of surprise, clearly not expecting him to answer. "Thank you for picking up." "What is it, Lorelei?" His tone was flat. Silence on the other end for a moment. "I guess you know by now about the investigation into Thaddeus." "Yes, the FBI contacted me." Another silence. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," Gareth replied briefly. "I wasn't involved in Thaddeus's investment scam, nor was I aware of it." "What about me?" Lorelei's voice suddenly became tense. "Did you tell them I knew about these things?" Gareth felt a wave of irritation. "I didn't mention you, Lorelei, but that doesn't mean I'm protecting you. If they ask me, I'll tell the truth." "I didn't know." Gareth. Lorelei suddenly became emotional. "I really didn't know what Thaddeus was doing. I just trusted him, just like I once trusted you." "Don't compare me to him." Gareth's voice cooled. "I never deceived you, nor did I ever deceive anyone." I know, Lorelei quickly said. "I'm not comparing. I'm just scared, Gareth. They might think I was an accomplice, but I really didn't know." Gareth closed his eyes, feeling a wave of fatigue. Regardless of what happened in the past, he didn't want anyone to be punished for crimes they didn't commit. "If the FBI contacts me again, I'll tell them I don't know whether you were involved or aware. That's it. That's the truth, and that's all I can do." "Thank you, Gareth." Lorelei's voice carried obvious relief. "I know I have no right to ask you to do anything." "You certainly don't," Gareth said calmly. "Goodbye, Lorelei." He hung up and looked at the night sky. No matter what, He needed to keep his distance from the past, not out of resentment, but to protect the peaceful life he had struggled to build. In the following weeks, the investigation into Thaddeus became a hot topic locally. Media reported how the scam had deceived dozens of retirees, with total losses exceeding $2 million. Thaddeus was arrested, with bail set so high he couldn't pay it. Through his network of friends, Gareth learned that Lorelei and Thaddeus had parted ways. She had moved back to her sister's house, trying to distance herself from the investigation. Investigators seemed to believe she was unaware, but due to her close relationship with Thaddeus, she still needed to be questioned. Gareth's life continued moving forward. His company won a major client, meaning he needed to purchase more trucks and hire more drivers. He began considering buying a small warehouse as company headquarters, rather than continuing to rent the current office space. Just as everything was going smoothly, he met a teacher named Imogen at a local restaurant. She was a friend of a friend, introduced to Gareth at a gathering. They had dinner together several times and found they got along well. Imogen was gentle and independent, understanding Gareth's value for stability and honesty. Their relationship developed slowly but steadily, without passionate sparks, but with comfortable rapport. Life seemed to finally be on the track Gareth had hoped for, until that Saturday afternoon, when the doorbell rang as he and Imogen were enjoying a barbecue in his backyard. Gareth opened the door and was surprised to see Lorelei standing there, looking much more haggard than the last time they met. "Lorelei," Gareth asked puzzledly, "what are you doing here?" "May I come in?" she asked softly. "Just for a few minutes. I have something important to tell you." Gareth hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside to let her in. He led her to the living room, not the backyard, to avoid direct contact with Imogen. "What's so important that you had to say it in person?" Gareth asked, his voice carrying obvious impatience. Lorelei took a deep breath. The investigators found more evidence. Thaddeus wasn't just running a scam. He also— She paused, as if searching for the right words. "He was also dealing in contraband." Gareth raised an eyebrow. "What does that have to do with me?" "He told investigators that you knew about these things." Lorelei's voice began to tremble. "He said you had once helped him transport goods, using your trucks and routes." Garrett's expression instantly cooled. "That's a lie. I have never been involved in any illegal activities, let alone transporting contraband for Thaddeus." "I know it's a lie," Lorelei said urgently. "That's why I'm here. I thought you should know, so you can be prepared to defend yourself." Gareth felt a wave of anger rise. Even when facing serious charges, Thaddeus was still trying to drag others down with him, especially former friends. "Does he have any evidence?" "Not that I know of." Lorelei shook her head. "But investigators might contact you again, and I thought you should know in advance." Gareth looked at her, trying to understand her motives. "Why tell me this, Lorelei? After everything that's happened, why help me?" A rare honesty and vulnerability flashed in Lorelei's eyes. "Because it's the right thing to do. Despite what I did to you, you shouldn't be punished for crimes you didn't commit." She paused. "And I owe you too much. This is a very small part of what I can do." Gareth didn't respond. Years of suspicion and distrust made it difficult for him to accept Lorelei's sudden kindness. "Thank you for the warning. If investigators contact me, I'll have my lawyer handle it." Lorelei nodded, then noticed the barbecue smell and faint laughter from the backyard. "You have a guest?" "Yes," Gareth answered briefly, not providing more details. Lorelei gave a bitter smile. "I understand. I won't disturb you then." She turned toward the door, but stopped before leaving. "I'm truly sorry, Gareth. Not just for today's matter, but for everything in the past. I know an apology might be too late and can't change anything, but I want you to know that I do regret hurting you." Gareth was silent for a moment, then said, "Regret can't change the past, Lorelei, but it might influence the future. I hope you learned something from all this." "I already have," Lorelei said softly. "The price was losing someone who truly cared about me." With that, she left, leaving Gareth standing at the door, lost in thought. When he returned to the backyard, Imogen looked at him with concern. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Gareth hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, just some past issues. Might need to deal with them, but it's not a big problem." Imogen smiled gently, not pressing further. This was something Gareth appreciated about her. She knew when to give space and when to offer support. As Lorelei had warned, the FBI contacted Gareth again, this time about Thaddeus's new allegations. Gareth, accompanied by his lawyer, firmly denied any involvement in illegal activities during questioning. Mr. Thaddeus claims you used your transportation company to ship contraband for him. Investigator Clark stated calmly. That's an absolute lie. Gareth remained calm. My company records are completely transparent, with proper documentation and clients for all cargo. I never transported anything for Thaddeus, legal or illegal. The lawyer added, my client is willing to provide complete business records, including detailed information on all cargo, client contracts, and route records to prove this. The investigation continued for several hours, but eventually, the investigators seemed to accept that Gareth was not involved. They told him they would contact him again if more information was needed. After leaving the FBI office, Gareth felt exhausted, not just because of the lengthy questioning, but because Thaddeus's betrayal had hurt him again, even when they no longer had any relationship. Are you all right? The lawyer asked, noticing his silence. Just thinking, Gareth said slowly, where I would be now if I hadn't left, if I had chosen to forgive and continue. Probably deeply involved in this scam, maybe even facing charges. The lawyer nodded. Sometimes, the most painful decisions bring the best results. Gareth didn't respond, but he knew it was true. His decision to leave, though painful, proved to be the right one now. He had avoided greater disaster and found true peace and happiness. A few weeks later, Thaddeus's trial began. Media reported the details, how he had deceived retirees into investing in fake projects, how he had used this money to fund his luxurious lifestyle, and even how he had dealt in contraband to fill funding gaps. There was no evidence supporting his allegations against Gareth, which were seen as a desperate man's last struggle. Lorelei testified as a witness, confirming she was unaware of Thaddeus's illegal activities. Nevertheless, because she had helped manage some accounts related to the case, she faced misdemeanor charges and potential fines. Gareth didn't participate in the trial or follow every detail. He had already decided to turn this chapter completely. His relationship with Imogen was deepening, his company continued to expand, and his life was full of new possibilities. Past wounds had healed, and though they left scars, they no longer hurt. After news of Thaddeus's conviction spread, Gareth received a text message from Lorelei. Thank you for not testifying. Although it wouldn't have changed the outcome, at least it made things less complicated. I'm moving to the West Coast to start over. Wish you all the best. Gareth looked at this message, feeling a strange calm. No resentment, no anger, just an acknowledgement of a relationship that had ended. He replied with a simple, good luck, and then deleted the conversation. 5 years passed, and Gareth's life had changed tremendously. His company had become one of the major transportation enterprises in the region, with over 20 trucks and more than 30 employees. He no longer drove personally, but focused on management and business expansion. He and Imogen had married and moved into a larger house, with enough space for them in Jasper, as well as potential family additions. One quiet Saturday morning, as Gareth was enjoying coffee in the backyard of his new home, he received an unexpected email. The sender was Lorelei, their first contact in years. The email was brief and direct. Thaddeus is out of prison. He still claims you betrayed him and has expressed a desire to talk with you. I thought you should know. Be careful. Gareth forwarded this email to his lawyer, asking if any legal action was needed. The lawyer advised him to document any contact or threats from Thaddeus, but without specific actions, they couldn't apply for a restraining order yet. In the following days, Gareth became more vigilant, ensuring the company's security systems were working properly and telling employees to watch for strangers. He didn't tell Imogen the specifics, only that they needed to be cautious because of some potential business threats. A week later, as Gareth was handling documents in his office, the front desk notified him of a visitor, a gentleman named Thaddeus. He says he has important matters to discuss. Gareth felt a wave of tension, but also a strange relief, finally facing this issue. Have him wait. I need to make a call first. He quickly contacted his lawyer and local police, explaining the situation. The police promised to send someone over, but it might take a few minutes. The lawyer advised against meeting Thaddeus alone and, if possible, to postpone the meeting. Gareth thought for a moment, then decided to confront Thaddeus, but in a public setting with witnesses present. He walked out of his office to the reception area, and saw Thaddeus standing there, with 5 years of prison life visibly etched on his face. Deeper wrinkles, a harder look in his eyes. "Thaddeus," Gareth said calmly. "I hear you wanted to see me." Thaddeus turned, an unnatural smile appearing on his face. "Gareth, old friend. Yes, I think we need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." Gareth kept his voice steady. "If you're here to threaten me, I've already notified the police. They'll be here any minute." Thaddeus's smile disappeared, replaced by a cold expression. "I lost 5 years of my life in prison, Gareth. 5 years. And here you are, running a successful business, living a happy life. Is that fair? You went to prison because of your own actions, Thaddeus, not because of me," Gareth said. "You deceived people who trusted you. You tried to frame me for involvement in your criminal activities. If you came here to make me feel guilty, you're wasting your time." Thaddeus stepped forward, but Gareth didn't back down. "I know you gave information to the FBI. You helped them find that evidence." "You're wrong," Gareth shook his head. "The FBI found evidence because you weren't careful enough, too greedy. You could have stopped, been content with your little scam, but you chose to enter more dangerous territory. That was your choice, Thaddeus, not mine." The tension between them was broken by the sound of a police car. 2 officers walked into the reception area. "Any problem, Mr. Gareth?" one officer asked. Gareth looked into Thaddeus's eyes, seeing the anger and frustration there. But he also saw something deeper, a recognition, an awareness that he could no longer hurt Gareth. "No problem, officer," Gareth finally said. Mr. Thaddeus was just leaving. Thaddeus's shoulders slumped, as if all fighting spirits suddenly disappeared. He looked at Gareth, his voice low. "You won, Gareth. You always win. Even when Lorelei chose me, you ultimately won." "This isn't about winning or losing, Thaddeus," Gareth calmly replied. "It's about choices and consequences. You and Lorelei chose betrayal. I chose to start over. We're all living with our choices." Thaddeus stared at him for a while, then turned and left, with the officers following closely, ensuring he really left. When Gareth returned to his office, he felt a strange liberation, as if a weight long suspended over his head had finally been removed. Thaddeus's appearance and departure, in some way, marked the final end of the past. That evening, when Gareth returned home, Imogen noticed his lighter mood. "Did something good happen?" she smiled and asked. Gareth thought for a moment, then nodded. "In a way, yes. Resolved some long-standing issues today. A chapter from long ago has finally completely ended." Imogen looked at him curiously but didn't press. She knew Gareth would tell her more when he was ready. They prepared dinner together, talking about daily life and future plans. Jasper circled at their feet, hoping for falling food. This ordinary family scene, this simple happiness, was something Gareth couldn't have imagined on that painful birthday night years ago. During that difficult time, when he left the house that was no longer home, he never thought he would feel whole again. But now, he did feel whole, not because he had forgotten the past, but because he had learned to coexist peacefully with it and draw lessons from it. Lorelei and Thaddeus chose the path of deception and paid the price. Gareth chose honesty and rebuilding, and now he reaped peace and happiness. This wasn't about moral judgment or retribution, but about how choices shape destiny. That evening, as Gareth sat with Imogen in the backyard watching the sunset, he recalled that birthday night 5 years ago, the pain when he was called that 1% accident. Now, he could calmly reflect on that experience, even feel somewhat grateful for it. It was that accident, that painful turning point, that guided him toward his current life, a life he himself chose and built. Sometimes, life's greatest pains can also be the most important turning points. And real power lies in how to respond to these turning points, how to learn from them, and how to move forward. Gareth did this, not through forgiveness or forgetting, but by accepting the past and then surpassing it. As night fully descended and stars began twinkling in the sky, Gareth held Imogen's hand, feeling the peace of this moment. Whatever happened in the past, the present life was his own creation, and the future would continue to be shaped by his choices. This awareness, this inner peace, was a gift he never thought he would find when he left that no longer warm home years ago. However, this is not the end, but a continuing journey. Tomorrow, Gareth would continue running his company, continue building his life with Imogen, continue moving forward. There are no perfect endings, only an ongoing process of choices and growth. And in this process, Gareth finally found a true home, not just a physical space, but a state of mind, a sense of belonging, a sense of peace. This, perhaps, was the most precious gift he gained from that painful accident. If this story resonates with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more wonderful content. Looking forward to meeting you in another story.